Hello everyone, I'm the Pretty Bass, and this is going to be my first video on my rebranded channel. This used to be the Brady Bass Extras, which would be a channel for all my miscellaneous stuff, but I've decided to remake it into the Brady Bass Commentary. And as my first video, I thought it would be a cool idea to give you some ant facts. 12 ant facts for the first ever video. I'd say that's pretty worth it. Now, fact number 1. Ants aren't just black and red. It's not that simple. There aren't just two species of ants. There isn't just black ants, and there isn't just red ants. If that was the case, then I don't even know. You see, colors of ants comes in many varieties. There's orange, there's yellow, there's blue, and then the common ones, red and black. Most ant species are red and black, even tinted yellow or orange. Yellow, orange, black, and red have to be definitely the most common colors of ants of all. Now, that's not supposed to mean that these colors of ants are boring, however, as just because it might be a common ant color doesn't mean it can't be exciting, such as some marauder ants. Those guys are black ants, and they are not guys you want to mess with. You probably always associated black ants with the nice ones, and red ants with the evil ones, but sometimes it can be the polar opposite. There's black crazy ants, which don't even think about leaving those guys alone if you see them at your house. You have the marauder ants, which, do I even have to explain? Just based off the name alone, I think you get the point. But then there's ants like the chestnut carpenter ant, which are red and large, and actually are quite peaceful. Now, I know, not all ants are truly peaceful, but compared to something like a marauder ant, a red chestnut carpenter ant is actually a lot less than what you'd want to be worrying about. Sure, they're carpenter ants, and so they'll, tunnel through your wood, but that's not what matters. What matters is that they're actually just still peaceful ants. The second fact I have for us is there are actually thousands of different ant species. I don't know if you guys watching this knew this, but there are indeed thousands of ants. How many? Vaguely 12,000. Yes, you heard me right. 12,000. There are 12,000 different types of ants. I know, that might sound crazy whenever you're just, used to the red and black, but that's 12,000 ants. So, yeah, ants can come in many different shapes of sizes. Some ants might have different shaped heads, some might be longer, some ants might be a lot bigger or smaller than each other, which means there's a lot of room for there to be 12,000 species. Alright, so my third ant fact is actually probably the most common ant fact. This is the most widely known one out of all, but it is that ants are actually ran by a queen. If you didn't know this, I kinda don't blame you, because, let's be real here, not everyone has the time to learn fully about ants, but it's the common, knowledge that ants are ran by a queen, but let me go more in depth. The queen ant isn't some just title given to an ant. It happens whenever an egg is laid by another queen ant, which I know this might be confusing, but buckle up. Whenever an egg's laid by another queen ant, the queen will slowly hatch, in which the only guarantee for it to be a queen is the workers actually just have to stuff the baby ant, called a larvae, with lots more food than normal. Overfeeding this baby ant will get it to grow into a new form, but I'll get more about that later. What we're focused on is the queen. Once the queen hatches, she will be called an elate. She will fly up, mate with male ants in the sky called a nuptial flight, and then she will land and then find somewhere to make a suitable nest. Now, whenever a queen ant does this, She actually has an entire system set up where she can lay eggs, whether they're female or male. By changing some switch somewhere, like biological switch, she can change literally just the gender of ant. Do you want a male drone ant? Do you want a worker ant that's female? Do you want to even lay a queen ant who will overfeed the egg to get it? So that's what the queen ant does, is that she kind of acts like a worker ant. She still has to eat, but she doesn't have to work. She kind of, like, obviously queen ants, have to still drink and eat. They're animals. But kind of like how a king is portrayed in movies. They just sit around, and then their servants feed them. And then in this case, the queen ants just lay eggs. And that's it. They just lay eggs. Anyway, the fourth fact goes straight into the third one. Remember how I was talking about how ants have nuptial flights? Well, a part of that is, sadly, male ants. The reason why you'll never see a king ant, now technically, yes, you could call them king ants because they're male. You will never see a king ant in the colony because, sadly, whenever they're mating in a nuptial flight, the king ants, or drones, or whatever you want to call them, will quite literally die shortly afterwards. Unlike termites, sadly, male ants can't help the queen in her colony expansion journey, as the male will shortly die afterwards. But, sadly, the longest parts of their lives are actually just when they're sealed up in the nest getting ready for a nuptial flight. And so that's how a male ant works. I'm glossing over this fact really fast because, it's kind of sad and it's the only, shortest one. And number 5. There are different roles within an anthill that you could be if you were an ant. Remember how I said there was different classes or so a worker ant could be if you fed them? Well, if you give an ant larvae a normal amount of food, it will grow up into a worker ant. However, if you feed the ant a little bit more, it might become what's called a media soldier. But this only happens in some species. Now, the more you feed an ant, the bigger it gets, basically. Like, the bigger you feed it as a larvae, the bigger it'll get, until eventually it might just become a queen. Now, the thing about soldier ants, there's different classes. There's a soldier ant, which is the defense. These guys are quite larger than the other ants, and are able to actually bite down with their jaws and do quite a lot of damage. Soldier ants get kind of a crazy rep in movies for being these tough guys, but in reality, soldier ants more just swarmers. They're panicked, and then they go bite, bite, crunch, crunch, bite, 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 and then they don't know if they'll survive or not. And so that's the soldier ant. And then we have the worker ant. They are the second most important ant in the entire colony. Obviously, other than the queen. The worker ants, their job is simple. They dig tunnels. Well, actually, no, their job isn't simple. They dig tunnels, they feed brood, and they expand the territory of the colony. They spread pheromones, more on that later, and they collect food. As a young worker ant, your task is to act as a nurse and feed all of the small nymphs. Now, whenever you're sort of more grown, you might get sent to go, dig out a tunnel or something. But when the workers are old enough, they can exit the anthill and go hunt. Or just, find food overall, and then send the signal to the colony that they found food, but again, more on that later. Okay, and so the 6th fact is, did you know that anthills actually have diverse rooms? Now, what I mean by that is that there's food storage rooms, which are quite self-explanatory, all the gatherings that the ants make. Well, they'll be placed right here in the food storage room. However, there's also I don't know what you call this. I guess it's like the living quarters are kind of where the ants sleep. Now, here's a bonus fact. Ants don't really sleep normally. They just stand there and kind of just shut their brain off. and it looks like they're asleep. Anyway, so when ants are just standing, falling asleep, they do this in this special room. It's basically just an ant bedroom. There's also, obviously, the queen's chamber, which, well, self-explanatory. The chamber underground where the queen is. Queen room. And there's also, potentially you can even get, like, a nursery, which is where all the eggs of the colony go. And there's even other rooms for other resource storage. So yeah, just like humans, in a house, there's different rooms in an anthill that all do different things. Just like how in a house you might have a living room, and a bathroom, and a kitchen. Different rooms are also designated different things in an anthill, kind of like mini humans. Alright, so the 7th ant fact is that ants can carry at least 10 times their body weight. I say at least 10 times because, really, does anyone know this information? Every single source that I've looked at over the years gives a different answer. One of them said they can carry 5,000 times their own weight. Another one says they can carry 50 times, 100 times, 20 times, 10 times. I'm starting to think these guys are just pulling these answers out of their noses. Where do you even get this crap from? I get it's based on the average weight of an ant, but I looked it up one time. The average weight of an ant is a gram. You cannot convince me the average weight of an ant is a gram. That feels way too heavy for an ant, bro. That has to be like the biggest species of ant that weighs a gram, bro. There's no way. So it's not really possible for an ant to be able to carry a whole loaf of bread. Yep, I did one search. I looked up how much can an ant carry. It said like 5,000 times. Average ant weight, 1 gram. Guess what that amounts to? A flipping loaf of bread. I don't think one ant carries a loaf of bread. This ain't a Looney Tunes cartoon, bro. These ants don't do that. Another bonus fact for you on this whole topic. Ants can't carry entire, like, cookies and stuff like you see in videos like that. They actually have to break down, like, the chunks of the food into smaller bits and then carry off those pieces. I mean, everyone always they always, like, glaze ants saying, bro, this guy can carry a semi-truck. No, I'm pretty sure not. You know, they're kind of like humans, at least, in the regard that, you know, a human has to at least, like, that's the whole point of, like, supply trucks. You can't just carry one single giant mound of, like, metal or something from point A to point B. You need, like, helicopters or, like, vehicles. One guy can't just carry a whole pile of metal or something. Same with ants. Now, sure, ants, based on their body weight, can carry a lot more than humans, but that's it. That's based off of their own, like, body weight ratio. They can still barely carry anything. I don't even think they can carry a piece of paper because, well, obviously the paper's too big. But still, ants are overhyped for their whole weightlifting capability. I'd like someone in the comments of this video, if anyone gets this far into the video, please comment what the actual number an ant can carry. I'm saying at least 10x because I feel that's realistic, but if anyone watching this video actually knows the real answer to this, please leave it in the comments because I'm curious. Alright, so number 8. Ants communicate through pheromones. I don't know if you knew this one, but rather than ants just talking using their antenna like many people think, they actually spread chemicals and pheromones for different things. One pheromone could signal that there was food found. A worker ant scout, which is what is called a scout ant, could be venturing the world, and let's say it finds a donut that someone dropped. This ant, as soon as it detects that the food is, well, food via scent, it will rub pheromones on the food, which sends a signal. This pheromone can actually be smelt by other ants from very far away. Once another ant picks up the scent, it might get curious. If that ant also sees the food, it will also send off this pheromone. And before you know it, your donut is infested with millions of tiny black dots that are all moving their little legs. And so that's how ant food collection works. And then, another thing that an ant pheromone can do, there's this thing called an alert pheromone. An alert pheromone is quite simple, guys. The ant will send this pheromone if it is being damaged, or like if it signals an attacker or something is happening, and it will send this special pheromone. Can only be smelt by soldier ants that I talked about earlier, and these soldier ants will rush to the scene and they will try and deal with the problem. So let's say there's like this like a tiger beetle or like some carnivorous beetle that just killed an ant or something. This ant, or no, let's not say killed, but somehow the beetle didn't just eat the ant, but you know, it damaged it. And so the ant could actually spread pheromone signals, signaling to the other ants, hey, let's go beat up this beetle because it hurt me. But if an ant goes, it releases a special acid. I forgot what type of acid this is, but it's the special type of acid that an ant releases upon, and then this acid will signal the other ants to the scene, and they will be like, oh, okay, he is now. And so they will carry the deceased ant into their what's called an ant graveyard, and then they will place this ant in the ant graveyard with all the other ants. Number 9. Ants can develop special ways of defense. This one's a quick one, probably. Different ant species have came up with clever ways of defending their different colonies. For an example, weaver ants, I'll make a whole separate video on those, and wood ants make this stuff called formic acid that they shoot. Yep, they quite literally shoot acid out of their gasters, which is the bottom part right here circled. They shoot acid out, which can irritate or even decease enemies, let's just say. And this acid is actually highly potent, because like I said, it can distract, disturb, and even, cause fatalities for the other creatures that attack. There's this one ant called the turtle ant that has this giant head that it uses to block up nest entrances. Your entire purpose as that ant is to be a door. And it's so sad. Number 10. Now, this one's a bit of an interesting one. Remember how I talked about how queen ants work a bit ago? Well, you see, there's certain ants, like, Dinoponera, that actually use gamergates, or gamergates. I don't know how to pronounce it, but either way, a gamergate, or whatever it's called, is basically just a word for a worker ant that is able to lay eggs. I know, sounds crazy, because I just explained that queen ants lay eggs, so might sound absolutely insane to you, but it's not. Well, it kinda is. They mate and do everything the exact same as a queen ant. However, I don't think they have wings. If I can't find an answer, I won't, put it up in editing, but I don't think they have wings, and they just do, I guess they don't do a nuptial flight, they just do a nuptial walk or something. And then, these worker ants will do the exact same thing a queen ant would do. So basically, it's just, now, I don't know why an ant species would choose to do a gamergate instead of just a normal queen ant. I mean, a Dinoponera, I think you can guess, based off the name, that those are some pretty dang big ants. So maybe it's just in the bigger ants. I think bullet ants do that, so yeah, of all I know, it's just in big ants specifically, so that's the thing. And now, number 11, speaking of dino and ants. Did you know that ants have existed for as long as dinosaurs? They've existed for well over 70 million years on Earth. That's quite a while. That's almost as old as my graham cracker that I bought from the store in 1209. Where was I again? Oh, right. Ants have existed for a long time. And what's funny, the ants you know today, the cute little walking animals that have 6 legs and are small, have you ever thought that ants kind of look like wasps? Like, just pull up a picture of a yellow jacket, and then, like a fire ant, or some yellow ant. Tell me these two don't look at least kinda similar, right? That is no coincidence. You see, ants, the best way I can explain this, are wasps that forgot that they could fly. Over evolution, wasps decided, who needs wings? And then, boom, they slice off their wings in evolution, and then now they're workers. I mean, ants. They're just ants now. That's very simplified, but, no one knows exactly how this happened. But that's the way of simplifying it, is certain types of wasps decided to shed their wings in the evolutionary path, and led to ants. Now, I believe there are actually species of flightless wasps, such as velvet ants, which these guys look awesome, by the way. Velvet ants, funnily enough, have the name ant in their name, yet they're actually flightless wasps. But what's funny is that ants are also flightless wasps, but then a velvet ant isn't. Velvet ant isn't an ant, but it's a flightless wasp. But ants are also evolutionarily flightless wasps, so I guess it is technically an ant. I don't know what I just said, but from now on, my headcanon is that velvet ants are ants, scientifically. I don't care if they're farly related. They're still flightless wasps, and ants are flightless wasps at their roots, so who cares at this point? Anyway, number 12 is ants can actually farm aphids. Do you know aphids? There's these tiny little green, and sometimes black, little scuttling bugs that love to infest all of your plants. They like to suck the sap straight out of your plants, and then they just go on their day. And then they just breed like little miniature green rabbits. And then before you know it, all your plants in your garden are dying, and as soon as you take out the magnifying glass, looks like your plant has a bunch of like bug bites on it, but the bug bites are actually aphids. And that's not good, because you see, aphids, like I said, damage crops. But ants found out a genius solution. Ants basically farm aphids. Specifically, Lasius genus and others ants are known to go up to an aphid on a plant, lightly tap the back of the aphid with their antennae, giving it a massage, and the aphid will pop out a little bubble of this translucent liquid. Now you might be questioning, well, what is this stuff? Is it water? It's not water. It's actually called honeydew. Aphids actually excrete, or that sounded wrong to say, but they basically just, I don't know how to say this, but they basically just, they pop out a little bubble of honeydew from their back, and then the ants will just eat this blob of honeydew that this aphid just produced. Basically, kind of like how humans, how they squeeze the udder of a cow to get it to milk into a bucket. That's what aphids do. Ants with aphids. They kind of just like pat the aphid, and then it makes aphid milk, which is honeydew. So basically, the aphid sucks the sap out of the plant, and then turns it into honeydew. Then the ant grabs the honeydew, and then runs off. What's funny is that in some cases, aphids have been completely milked dry by ants, which is hilarious. Just like a cow, some ants get greedy, and they run up to the aphid like a cow, and they literally just milk it dry. Literally just milk the entire aphid dry. Yep, you heard that right. And then this thing can't even produce any more stuff until a bit later. It can't even make more honeydew, because the dang ant was too greedy and forced it to make aphid milk too fast. And so that was my list of 12 ant facts, including a few bonus ones that have been thrown in there. So, that was my video. This is the first one on my rebranded channel. I'm actually planning to make this a part of a series called The Ant Lore Chronicles. Next up, we are going on this series to explore weaver ants. And let's just say, I'm pretty sure those guys have enough lore to fill half a novel. Anyway, I am the Brady Bass. Sihula Matatalapsus.